words are handwritten by flickering candlelight. We the people, they begin. And from these words flows the Constitution of the United States. A form of government, an expression of democratic ideals that is to become an example to the world. This is the story of our federal government, what it is, and how it has worked for almost 200 years to serve we the people. To ensure domestic tranquility, to promote the general welfare, to establish justice, to provide for the common defense, and to secure the blessings of liberty for ourselves and our posterity. These were the simple hopes and dreams of the men who framed the Constitution of the United States and proclaimed a government of, by, and for the people. The Founding Fathers had a deep belief in the people of the United States. They believed that government should exist only to serve the people. And so the first article of the Constitution establishes the legislative branch of our federal government, the Congress of the United States. It is the Congress, made up of a House of Representatives and a Senate, that has the power to make all federal laws. The House of Representatives is perhaps the section of government closest to the people. Members are elected every 2 years, and the 435 seats in the House, as it is called, are apportioned on a population basis, with each state having at least one representative. The House elects one of its own members to serve as Speaker and to preside over its proceedings. Across the Capitol building from the House of Representatives sits the other section of Congress, the Senate. There are 100 senators, 2 from each state, regardless of population. Senators serve for 6-year terms, with 1/3 of them elected every 2 years. The Vice President of the United States is the President of the Senate. In making laws, Congress follows today the same procedures set down and spelled out in the federal Constitution. All proposed legislation is first introduced by a member of either the Senate or the House of Representatives. It becomes a bill or resolution, is given a number, and referred to the Senate or House committee dealing with the subject or area of the proposed law. The committees handle thousands of proposed bills and resolutions every year. Only a small percentage reaches the floors of Congress for consideration. The Rules Committee is among the most powerful in the House of Representatives, for it has the right to determine when and if a bill will be sent to the full House for action. Among the many other important congressional committees are those dealing with foreign relations, banking and currency, appropriations, Veterans Affairs, labor and public welfare, and armed services. It is in committees such as Armed Services that the military speaks and is heard. The Department of Defense, headed by the Secretary of Defense, cooperates closely with Congress and its various committees. The Secretary of Defense is aided by a staff of special assistants to ensure the appropriations and the legislation needed to provide for the common defense. To military personnel, this service may take many forms. Increases in pay and benefits, better food, modern housing accommodations, special educational and technical courses, and the tools he needs to do his job. In short, a continuing concern for the serviceman, his family, and his future. When committee hearings are completed and a bill is approved, it moves to the floor of the Senate or the House. A simple majority is required in each house to pass the bill. But such action does not automatically make a bill a law. To become a law, a bill must be approved by the President, or if he vetoes it, by an overriding two-thirds vote of Congress. This presidential power illustrates a unique system of checks and balances that is the heart and soul of our federal government. To work efficiently and democratically, a government must have three major powers: to make laws, to enforce laws, to provide equal justice under the law. The framers of the Constitution knew this, but they were reluctant to entrust all three functions to one group or person. Rather, they established three major branches of government: the legislative branch, or Congress, to enact laws; the executive branch, or the presidency, to carry out the laws; and the judicial branch, symbolized by the Supreme Court, to protect the personal liberties of the people as set forth in the Constitution, to interpret laws, and to settle disputes in equity. The powers of these three branches are carefully balanced and intertwined. Each part of the government, legislative, executive, judicial, can only function in relation to the others. This system not only balances power among the three branches, but it also provides a check on each branch by the other two. No one branch can dominate the federal government. For example, the president has the power to disapprove of or veto any law passed by Congress. But Congress, in turn, has its check on the president. Any measure vetoed by the president can become a law after having been passed by a two-thirds majority in both houses of Congress. The Supreme Court, balanced by the fact that its members are appointed by the president and approved by the Senate, has its own check on both branches through its power to declare laws unconstitutional. With remarkable vision, our forefathers brought forth an instrument of government designed to safeguard the freedom of the people. In this brilliant and enduring concept of checks and balances, all executive authority is vested in the President of the United States. It is the President who is charged with administering the executive branch of the federal government and carrying out the laws of the land. And it is the President who is the elected leader of our nation, the spokesman for the people and for their government. The President and the Vice President are the only federal officials elected by all the voting citizens in the United States. In discharging the powers of his office, the President works closely with Congress. To gain congressional approval and support, the President exercises his right and duty to propose legislation. He makes his proposals through presidential messages. Each year, the President outlines, in general terms, new programs in a speech before Congress that is called the State of the Union. Later, Congress will receive the President's annual budget message, which outlines governmental expenditures and details how the money will be allocated among the various departments and agencies. The President proposes, but Congress enacts, fulfilling the fundamental principle of checks and balances. This concept is perhaps most strikingly illustrated in a declaration of war. The President can proclaim a police action and commit troops to a combat zone in an emergency. But he must have congressional approval for a declaration of war. Congress, and Congress alone, has the sole authority to declare war. Here in 1941 is the historic session of Congress at which President Franklin Delano Roosevelt asked for a declaration of war against the Axis powers.
I ask that the Congress declare that since the unprovoked and dastardly attack by Japan on Sunday, December 7th, 1941, a state of war has existed between the United States and the Japanese Empire.
Another of the intertwining relationships between the President and Congress is the conduct of foreign affairs. The President may propose treaties, such as the Nuclear Test Ban Treaty, but the final pact must be approved by a 2/3 vote of the Senate. In conducting our relations with other countries, the President determines those foreign governments we will recognize and those we will not. The United States ambassadors and other emissaries who serve abroad are the personal representatives of the President and are appointed by him, again with the consent of 2/3 of the Senate. Thus is maintained the balance of power. Informally, and yet no less importantly, the overseas serviceman is also a representative of and an ambassador for his country and his government. There is another and equally vital link between servicemen and their president. For under our federal Constitution, the President is Commander-in-Chief of our armed forces. This role has taken many presidents through the years to many places, to see and to share the serviceman's lot. President Abraham Lincoln in the Civil War. President Franklin D. Roosevelt in World War II. President-elect Dwight Eisenhower in Korea. And President Lyndon Johnson in Vietnam, emphasizing that for civilians and servicemen alike, ours is truly a government of, by, and for the people. As chief executive, the President commands the armed forces. But actual administration of the military is vested in the Secretary of Defense. He, in turn, is assisted by the Secretaries of the Army, the Navy, and the Air Force. The armed forces are charged with the duty of preserving, protecting, and defending our national security. Again, the individual serviceman is an instrument and an integral part of the executive branch. Wherever he serves, whatever he does, the soldier, sailor, airman, and Marine is playing a vital role in the everyday life of our federal government. For the Defense Department is the largest of all executive departments and agencies, and its budget is more than half of the total budget of the federal government. While the day-to-day administration of the military establishment is vested in the Secretary of Defense, it is the President who decides how and where the armed forces are to be employed to provide for the common defense and to achieve the objectives of American foreign policy. The President and the Secretary of Defense are advised on military policy by the Joint Chiefs of Staff, which includes the Chairman, the Army Chief of Staff, the Chief of Naval Operations, the Air Force Chief of Staff, and the Commandant of the Marine Corps. But it is and must be the President alone who makes the crucial decisions in matters of defense and security. The Department of Defense is one of 12 cabinet departments that assist the President in administering the complex executive functions of the federal government. These cabinet departments develop new concepts, new programs, new policies for evaluation and action by the President. The Department of State handles our relations with foreign countries. The Treasury Department collects taxes and is concerned with our country's finances. The Attorney General is responsible for federal legal matters and law enforcement. The Postmaster General directs the activities and services of our nation's post offices. The Department of the Interior is in charge of the maintenance and preservation of our natural resources and national monuments, Indian reservations, and island possessions. The Agriculture Department deals with a multitude of matters relating to farming, dairy production, and cattle. The Commerce Department handles the affairs of commerce and industry. The Department of Labor is entrusted with activities affecting the welfare of more than 60 million working men and women in the United States. The Department of Health, Education, and Welfare is concerned with the care of untold other millions of Americans, from the very young to the very old. Two recently created departments are meeting the growing needs of our country. The Department of Housing and Urban Development focuses its attention on the problems of metropolitan living. And the Department of Transportation oversees all forms of domestic travel, on land, water, and in the air, and also has jurisdiction over the activities and operations of the Coast Guard. The heads of these departments and agencies and their personnel implement the laws of the land under the supervision of the President, promoting the general welfare of the people. The third branch of the federal government is the judiciary, symbolized by the Supreme Court building in Washington. and the words chiseled in marble above its entrance: equal justice under law, interpreting that law and safeguarding the personal liberties of all citizens. Inside the halls of this historic building are remembered the distinguished jurists who gave authority and stature to the Supreme Court, and life and meaning to liberty and justice for all. John Jay, the first Chief Justice of the United States. The Venerable John Marshall, who wrote many pioneering decisions and set many legal precedents during his 34 years as Chief Justice. In the case of Marbury versus Madison, he established the principle that the Supreme Court could declare an act of Congress unconstitutional, thus making the court and not Congress the last authority on the validity of a law. Still another example of constitutional checks and balances. William Howard Taft, who was the only former president to serve as a Chief Justice, a post he told friends he enjoyed more than the presidency. And the present Chief Justice, Earl Warren. In addition to the Chief Justices, there have been other members, such as Oliver Wendell Holmes, who have left a deep imprint on the court and its deliberations. Louis Brandeis is recognized as one of the great 20th century justices. Through the years, in landmark decisions, the Supreme Court has, through its rulings, defined and interpreted freedom and justice. In the field of education, the Supreme Court in 1954 struck down the concept that segregated schools offered equal educational opportunities to white and Negro students. And in the issue of representation in state legislatures, the High Tribunal declared seats should be apportioned to reflect the idea of one man, one vote. In each case and every decision, the Supreme Court is, by the exercise of its power, the guardian of individual rights and liberty. But again, this power is not absolute, not without its check or balance. Each member of the Supreme Court is appointed by the President, and the appointment must be confirmed by the Senate. And although the appointment is for life, any justice can be removed by congressional impeachment, just as a president can be removed from office. The vision of our founding fathers has seen beyond the years. The executive, judicial, and legislative branches of our federal government have worked together with mutual respect and individual integrity. And their labors have sustained and strengthened our federal government for almost 200 years. We today are the posterity to whom the founding fathers referred in the Constitution. We are the inheritors of the legacy of freedom that has come to be known as the miracle at Philadelphia. The more perfect union that has been passed on and handed down in peace and in war, in good times and in bad, decade to decade, generation to generation. To us, and to each new generation to come, is the continuing challenge to preserve for ourselves and our posterity the blessings of liberty.